So we gather virtually today and in person on stolen land. Land that belongs to no one, but that was tended lovingly for thousands of years by Cheyenne, Ute, Arapaho, and other nations whose names have been lost to history. We didn't receive permission to be here, and no number of words can do justice to the suffering that those nations experienced at the hands of European settlers. Today we find ourselves in another moment of struggle. Our world and the people on it are convulsed by fevers, both metaphorical and literal. We've been quarantined at home with civil unrest in the streets, extreme weather ravaging the landscape, and our democracy in peril, as well as, war on the horizon. And still the sun rises, and the birds sing, and the rain cools the soil, and still love happens and is woven into the fabric of our days. We gather here today in the hope, always present, that love can heal, that the traumas of the past and present can yet be overcome with compassionate learning, collaboration, and graceful action. May this humble gathering serve as a small step toward remembering our true place in the dance of life and a small step on our long path back home. I love that acknowledgement. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you for being here, showing up on a Saturday morning. We really appreciate it. As Helen said, I have been a farmer and worked in food and farming in various capacities for the last 10 years, and when I heard about this panel, I was super excited because I think that's a question that comes up in a lot of every farm I've ever worked at, and every farm anybody I know has ever worked at is like, how do you lead a farm well? What are the key facets for a successful, healthy team culture, and how do you do that while also weighing all of the challenges of farming and also all of the joys of farming? So I'm really excited with this group of people we have here, a really great group of farmers with a wide range of experiences and interests, and I'm excited to hear also from everybody in the audience, and I'm really hoping for this to be a dialogue, and I think the answers to how to do this well are in this room. I think everybody has pieces to bring to the table of what it takes to run a good farm team and have a healthy farm team culture, and so I'm excited to hear what everybody has to say. And to start off, I wanted to do a little exercise that has us moving our bodies, because we live in bodies and it's helpful to move them around, as farmers would know. And so this is an exercise called Continuum. Has anybody done it before? Basically, we are going to make an invisible line on the floor, and on one side of the line, it will be that window will be strongly disagree. I don't agree with this statement, or this doesn't work for me, and then on the other side will be yes, I totally agree, this is very much 100% how I see the world and what's exciting for me. And so we'll probably do it, since there's all this stuff over here, back there. So, great. Okay, so this activity requires everybody to stand up, and we're all gonna walk over here. And again, on this side of the room is no, not at all. And then this side over here is enthusiastic yes. Totally 100%, I'm into that. And so if you're I don't know, maybe I'm in the middle, I'm not quite sure, stand somewhere in the middle. You can, the whole continuum. So just put yourself wherever it feels right for you based on this.
No tripping on any of these cards.
Yeah. And don't trip. This one seems good, this one seems a little okay, so as a test question, a neutral test question, which is, breakfast is the best meal of the day. So just,
which side is which? No?
That is no, and that is yes.
Are we gender divided right now?
Minus one outlier.
Hiding over in the far yes.
Yeah.
Strong yes.
Yes.
Might be the only meal of the day.
Okay, so we've got a spread, but generally people are like, not super into breakfast, except for some folks who are really into breakfast.
Highly into breakfast.
Yeah, so that's the thing. As I read the questions, we can note and we can talk about if it feels exciting later, if we have time, of like, what do we notice about how we feel about looking around and seeing where everybody is and where we are in relationship to where everybody is, and just like, oh, what are we learning about ourselves and other people as we're doing this activity? Okay, and yeah, some of these questions might be challenging, and it's okay if you like waffle or don't know the answer, and that's why we have a middle place. Okay, so the first question is, I know that farming is the vocation for me.
I hope most of you go that way.
Cool. Yeah. Generally, but some outliers. Okay. I have experienced deeply challenging interpersonal dynamics on farm crews.
Everyone come on.
I have experienced great joy and fulfillment on farm crews. I feel ownership on the land I work on. I feel empowered to modify my work in the way that best suits me. I would be content never interacting with another person while farming. Introverts out there.
Somewhere in here. Somewhere in here, for sure. Not all the way, but somewhere close. Yeah, somewhere in here, yeah.
I fully enjoy my work culture and think it is the best that it can be. Improvements? Seems like there could be improvement. My values and farming practices are in total alignment.
Getting better.
It's like a disagreement.
I feel like I'm making it up as I go along.
Move right over here now. Absolutely.
I am able to listen and respond to the needs of my body during the farming season. I am able to listen and respond to the needs of my body during the off season. I feel comfortable and capable of communicating about tension at work. It's no over there. Yeah. My feedback is valued and leads to meaningful change.
It's weird because like it's totally different now.
And I think that the human facets of a farm are just as important as the other ecological facets. Mostly people. Great. Okay, that was my last question. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome again, everybody, and welcome for the first time people on Zoom to the How to Boss panel, which is part of the Flatiron Young Farmers Coalition Employment Bootcamp series. And I think you can find out more about the series and upcoming events on the Flatiron Young Farmers website. And welcome, we're glad to have you here. So the conversation we're gonna have today is with this group of 6 panelists, and then also we're welcoming all questions from the audience around the conversation of how to create a healthy farm culture. So both how to lead in a farming capacity, and also as an employee, what are you looking for in your leader, and what feels like a healthy, what are you looking for, what are the components of a healthy farm crew? And our panel is a group of people who are all farmers or have been farmers, and we're interested and excited about talking about this topic. Everybody has a range of experiences, from people who have been farming for over a decade to people who have been farming for a few years, as interns, crew leads, managers, owners, and so we're really welcoming a variety of perspectives into this panel, and the philosophy is kind of that everyone has something important to contribute to this conversation. Like if you've been leading forever and that's just what you know how to do versus you're just getting into it, and just being able to kind of share and have a conversation around these different perspectives. Before we start the conversation, I also just we have some community guidelines that are posted up here. And for the people on Zoom, the first one, and this one I think felt important just because the farming community is small, and we all know people and each other, and so trying to practice anonymity and speaking to experience as much as possible in the conversation. So not naming people, especially around conflict, really just talking about centering your own experience of that conflict and what you can, what feels shareable, and respecting other people who are here or maybe not here. And then leading with curiosity. So again, this is about generating as much kind of information as we can around from our human resources, and inviting questioning when possible. Seeking alignment rather than agreement, which is that we won't all agree, and that's okay. That difference is important and generative, but we are all aligned in this intention of like, oh, we want to have healthy farm culture. What does that look like? Again, with the anonymity, just using I statements when possible, and also just not generalizing. And if you notice yourself generalizing, you can step back a little bit and kind of talk about your personal experience. And then step up and step back, which is just self-note, and we can, are you talking a lot? I mean, I'm currently talking a lot, but and if you are, can you step back a little and give space for other people to talk? And if you notice yourself not speaking up a lot, can you take the courage to share, because everyone's perspective is really important in this conversation. Great. So those are the guidelines. If you have any questions about them, you can ask them. But so this conversation is about the human dynamics of farming, which are complex and interesting and have a combination of soft and hard skills. It's not always as clear-cut as a financial spreadsheet. And so this conversation is an opportunity for us to dive into some of those complexities and figure out what structures and strategies are helpful for farmers of all different kinds to put in place to provide, and I'm going to quote Renee, because I really appreciated something you said in an email, which is just provide dignified and meaningful work for people of all experience levels. And I feel like that struck me as a really good benchmark for like, okay, yeah, this work is important, and everybody, it's like passionate and challenging, and how do we do it in a way that provides dignified work for everyone involved. And I also just want to caveat that this conversation is given in the context of our world and our food system and the challenges that are posed to small-scale farmers within the context of how farming is seen and supported in our current world, and that it's just, there are many challenges, and as we talk about things like money and time, just to be sensitive around that these are sticky subjects and trying to treat them with respect and honoring everyone's perspective and trusting that people are really coming from a good place. And yeah, like this is not a work, this generally people are not getting into this work for money. So and if they are, I'd love to hear so I would love to introduce our panelists. I'll start with the one closest to me. This is Renee Marcou, who is currently in her 8th year of farming at the Talia Farm at the Talia Mental Health Center. Is that Talia Campus for Mental Health?
For health and well-being.
Health and well-being. She is in her 8th year of farming, and she hopes to inspire and teach more people about the science and art of urban farming. She believes in the restorative power of fresh, nutritious food to support the foundational health and well-being of individuals and communities. And as a woman and a person of color, she works to connect and collaborate to address systemic oppression in the food system and break down barriers. Next, we have Talia Feinberg, who has worked on small organic farms for 4 seasons as a crew member and a lead. She's passionate about advocating for farm workers' rights in a way that acknowledges the realities of our current system. She's also passionate about the solidarity economy and alternatives to capitalism. She hopes to one day explode the employee-employer relationship by being part of a worker-owned cooperative farm.
Yeah.
Next, we have Hannah George, who has long loved engaging with the earth and has farmed in New York and Colorado with experience on vineyards, orchards, diversified vegetable operations, including most recently as vegetable garden co-manager at a small permaculture orchard and vegetable farm in Boulder. And then Tim Villard, who is the food project manager at Growing Gardens. Since arriving in Colorado in 2011, Tim has been growing food in home gardens, school gardens, community gardens, and farms. He now manages the 1-acre food project in Longmont, a community-centered farm that invites residents of Longmont to participate in growing and eating from the farm and distributes all food at low or no cost to Longmont residents. And then we have Catherine Blackwell. Catherine Blackwell Hess has been a farming addict for the last decade. What was supposed to be a summer internship before grad school turned out to be a life path. She has worked on and managed farms ranging from 3 acres to 300 and is committed to growing soulful food that enlivens soil and souls. And then finally we have Amanda Scott, who is the co-owner of 63rd Street Farm with her husband Brian, just outside of Boulder. She has been running the farm since 2009, starting their CSA in 2010. The farm grows a variety of vegetables and animals to feed the Boulder County community. Amanda and Brian are both certified in permaculture design and have brought those principles into their farming. Great, welcome all of the panelists, and I'm excited to hear what everyone has to say about all of these topics. And I'm going to start just with like a brief intro question, just so everybody can hear a little bit from everyone. So very briefly, what brought you to farming, and if you're still farming, what keeps you farming?
Would you like me to start?
Sure.
Since I'm on the other meeting. My daughter brought me to farming. Having a baby, like I was working in the restaurant industry, and having a pure baby come into the world, you want to see this human be able to have the best life and eat the best foods as possible. Food has always been a passion, but farming, being outside, and I'm so excited for you because now you get to farm with your little baby next to you, and it sounds wild, but it's actually really fun. The first food that she ate was arugula and scallions when you're out there weeding, and just everything goes into a baby's face, and so that really drove how I decided to farm, because my daughter was eating everything in front of her, and everybody that comes to our farm, there's a lot of children, and that was the passion that kept me going, that there are kids out there that need dirt on their food, and that is that we need to keep feeding them some dirt so they can stay healthy. Not just dirt, but good soil.
Similarly, I came from, I graduated college with an arts degree and was like, what the heck did I get that for? And was working for what I thought would be a summer in a farm-to-table restaurant in Charleston, and had sunchokes and Romanesco for the first time, and was just blown away that I was 20 years old and unfamiliar with foods that are growing on planet Earth. So I learned about ATRA, a website that helps people find internships, and started working on a farm called Gaining Ground in North Carolina. That was a 13-acre diversified vegetable farm, but then also raised animals. And at the time I had been a vegetarian for 8 years, but being on a farm and seeing how those animals were raised completely changed my diet and my perspective, and just really solidified my commitment and understanding of what healthy food is, and how to not just grow it for yourself, but to provide it for other people. And yeah, I just caught the bug and have jumped from farm to farm since.
Yeah, I came to farming through kind of a love for nature, I think. I got a degree in environmental conservation and thought I might work in, resource conservation or managing natural spaces. I think the thing that I learned pretty quickly was, people are kind of the ones infringing on nature and destroying natural places. And so in a roundabout way, I found farming because it was this intersection of human, people and the land. It seemed like a very impactful place to work. And then once I tried it out, I caught the bug as well and just got totally enamored with growing food and getting it to people and interacting with people in the space of farming.
Hey Tim, one quick question. Is your mic off by chance? We're not hearing you.
I think
It's on now.
it's off too.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks for talking loud.
And thank you guys for all tolerating the mic situation, it's really helpful.
Similar to Tim, I got into the farm world via environmental conservation and that perspective, with just it being the largest land use in our country and seeing it as a way to conserve large scale landscapes and just engage with the earth. And I got into farming through most recently through a desire to just be with people and in person and work out on the land with my hands. And it's been a wonderful way to work.
I got into farming, I think I kind of grew up loving food first and also working outside, and then fell into working on a school garden for a little while and kind of realized that is food and working outside at the same time is the dream. And I think kind of what keeps me engaged is learning about the history of a lot of these different aspects of history of crops and foods and cooking, preserving, and also how communities in other parts of the world and in the past have supported themselves. I definitely tend to go big picture and think about just because this is what most people are doing now doesn't mean it actually makes the most sense or is the best way to do things. So that's learning more about what's possible and what's already worked well for people is kind of keeps me excited to try new things.
I grew up in upstate New York, surrounded by farmland, and I could not wait to move to a big city. I never in a million years thought that I would come back to it. But out of college, I started working in nonprofits with low-income women and children, unhoused folks. And the food mentality in that nonprofit was those people should be lucky to be getting any food, didn't matter the quality. And it didn't sit right with me. And I had the opportunity to take on an unpaid internship at the time. I jumped at it. It was hard, but it felt like coming home. Caught the bug too. Don't think I'll ever leave the space. So.
Thanks, y'all. And Renee, that last thing you said actually is a great segue into the first question I had, which was something that came up when we had all been talking before, which was about internships and internship experiences. What makes a meaningful internship as opposed to an exploitive one, and how do you set up the structures? And I'd love to hear Renee, Catherine, and Talia, you all had mentioned that this was a specific interest of yours, and so I'd love to hear from you and also from anyone else.
Yeah, I want to bring Amanda in this because I really respect her program too, so just saying. No pressure, but speak up. Since I'm talking, I'll take it away. I started farming on the Gaining Grounds Farm, 13 acres down in North Carolina, for Ann and Aaron Greer, and what made the difference for me was the education component. I have notes that I took. I had time to take notes. I think in all farming and any profitable business, it's about the farm. You know, it's not, you all have to have like this external point of view. It can't be about you. It's about the farm and the farm's needs. But I really appreciated working for them because they prioritized the people. I lived in a school bus out on the farm. We worked from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., longer on Friday harvest days if need be. But it was so meaningful, and something I really admired about them is there wasn't this set of hierarchy. We were all important to the farm and the farm's success, and you know, anything that they had, we showered in their house, we shared their kitchen. We had our own kitchen as well, but you know, anytime they were cooking dinner, we were invited to participate. And I think just really creating that sense of community and even family. I think farming's so much more intimate than any other business. You're with each other 12 hours a day sometimes, and really just valuing the people. And I felt valued, and I stuck around for a second year at that same farm. So I've really just always cherished that, and then have really looked for that in other internship programs, you know, just the opportunity for people to not just be a hand weeder or a harvester, but really get to see the full spectrum of what farming is and walk away at the end of it with some insight to what it takes to actually run a farm business.
Excuse me. The internship we have at my farm is meant to be kind of dipping your toes in, especially for those urban folks who are coming from another job, don't have any farming experience. And like I was saying, it is all about being people-centered. Right now I'm flipping through books, going page by page, saying what would benefit my interns the most from this particular book. They don't need to read the whole book in a season, that's silly. And you know, I know a lot of farm internships are unpaid, but if you can really center the learning aspect of it, I think that people can find meaning from it, even if it is unpaid. Of course, we'd always want to pay people, but that's just not always in the cards for folks.
We offer internships on our farm. We offer these to people who have zero experience. It's really tough to get a farming job, even around here, to have no experience to try to get into the world of farming. So we try to encourage those people to come into our farm. You get paid very little, but you also, with pay, for our expectation, you do need to work, and we will also teach. We look at it as a simultaneous project. We're going to sit here in this bed of carrots. If everybody's weeded and thinned carrots, you know, that's not a quick process. So you got lots of time to chat. And so that's the time where I look at all of the staff and I was like, who's got questions? We're here for the day. Like, let's chat. What do you want to know? And this is the time where education and conversations come up. I'm an open book. I don't need to hide anything. Farming, you can find all the answers online if you'd like to, but it's a little bit better just to have it a little bit more personable. We do also require our staff to live on site. I think that if you really want to farm, you need to live on a farm and actually get the full experience of, hey, just because you're off doesn't mean that the cows aren't running down the road. We better get out there and start hauling ass because it's going to be a little bit of a run. They're heading for somebody else's house. And if everybody's ever chased animals before, you just have to know that that can happen at any moment. We do offer lots of different things on our farm so that people can learn vegetable production, animals, harvesting animals. We do all of that. All of our staff is mandatory to harvest chickens on our farm. We've had vegans and vegetarians working for us. Really put some perspective into life. And when people come in and they think it's a big joke and they start laughing when we're killing animals, it gets pretty serious really fast for me. They're lives that we're taking, and we need to appreciate all of those lives. So this is something that we try to teach everyone that comes through. We also have a small vineyard on our farm, a small orchard, we have bees, we have all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of a, let's see what is your interest so that you can follow that. For me, the biggest key to keeping everybody happy is popsicle breaks. That's what everybody needs to write down for the day's lesson. 3 o'clock popsicle break. Everybody will be stoked. Get a couple more hours of work. I can keep talking, so you got to cut me off.
Okay, thank you. And Talia, I know this is something you had talked about, so I'm curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think y'all brought up like really important points in terms of like focusing on learning, so that like for people who aren't getting paid or getting paid very little, they feel like they're getting something out of it. And then I really appreciate what you said about like the transparency and the opportunities to work directly with the farm owners. I've definitely learned a lot from that, and in situations where I'm mostly just working with people who like have the same similar experiences to me, or just like supervisors who aren't as invested or whatever. Definitely don't learn as much, and that can be frustrating. And I personally would like to live in a world where there are no unpaid internships. It's kind of, this is like one of the few industries where it's like really common and like expected to have to do that. And I get it that it works for some people. But I think like, yeah, not that it's like impossible to have like a meaningful, worthwhile farm internship, because there's always going to be people who can afford to do that and who that's worth it for them. But I think like just acknowledging the history of this industry, and like I think one of the questions or points that you all had, kind of talking points you guys have written up, was like what makes agriculture different from other industries. And part of that is the history of this field in this country, where in the 30s, when like national labor protections were being passed, agriculture and domestic labor were exempted from those protections. And like the history of slavery in agriculture, and the kind of like expectation that housing and food could be provided as compensation instead of wages. And I don't want to say that to like just whatever erase the value of all internships, but I think it's like helpful to be real about why that has become an expected part of this field. And like it does take a lot of intention and a lot of planning and a lot of openness to feedback to build an internship program that like is as fair as possible in our given system, basically. So hopefully that wasn't too, I don't know, negative.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. I just want to let everybody know that we have decided to ditch the microphones because they are not working. So no need to hold on to those. So we're just basically getting enough sound through the computers and the device that Phil put there. So no worries. Phil, should they speak up any louder, or is everything fine?
No.
Okay.
All
right. Great.
All good.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And again, I think every perspective is important in this conversation. Does anybody else have any reflections about farm internships? Good value? Yes.
If you are looking to be an intern, it is important to ask the farmer what they do and like how does their internship work for you. Because when you come into an interview, you don't expect to just be interviewed. You need to interview as well as for farming. it is important to know what you're looking for in a farm if you're a staff member and what your expectations are.
I would also like to just say that we, in our last workshop, there's a lot of information about the legal side of internships and what that means. So do take a look at that, because it was really interesting to me to know more about like what you can and can't do as a farmer, especially with our new agricultural workers' rights bill. So, sorry, that's all. Go ahead, Renee.
I was just going to add that, I think that people, farm owners, farm managers, can make really good, meaningful internships, and they can be tailored to both the needs of the farm and the people. My internship is 1 day a week, it's 8 hours, and I spend 8 hours directly with them. We spend workshop time, skill acquisition time, time to talk about things that come up, feelings that come up with it. And so, if you were to look at it on paper, it would be like a net detriment to the farm in terms of like hours worked. But with my farm only being 1 acre and in the actual city of Denver, I find that, the education part is vital both to the future of farming and for my farm. So, it can be tailored to however your needs are, while also keeping in mind the needs of the interns.
Tim?
Yeah, I feel like I should chime in as I manage interns. I like what everyone else has said. I don't have a lot to add. Like, there's a financial compensation, which hopefully you can provide. Depends on your farm and business situation. Then there's the educational part, and I think, and we're talking about how to manage people today. Like, it's on a good manager to take that part really seriously. So, at our business at Growing Gardens, what we do, we also engage our interns in that conversation. So, interns, they propose to us what they would like to take away from this experience. They get to propose a few things, and then we check in throughout the season and prioritize those things in our learning or in our teaching, and make sure that we are both approaching those goals for them. They feel that they are getting the value that they want out of it. And I think it's really important. It's on the manager to really hold yourself to that, have a good conversation with your intern, and make sure you're supplying that value.
Great. In that last sentence, talking about having good conversation, that seems like something a couple of people have mentioned is communicating expectations on both sides and having a really clear sense before you sign on for a farm project or hire someone that like everybody's on the same page around what is expected. And I'm curious, communication and miscommunication can be some of the most challenging interpersonal pieces of the farm. You can say one sentence and think, and the other person hears a completely different sentence. So what tools do you have both for communicating both expectations and also just keeping up communication throughout the farm season? And that can be soft skills, like what are your communication tools, and then also like, are there other hard skills or do you have visuals? Like, do you do text chains? Like, how do you communicate effectively and efficiently? And anybody can start.
I usually always start, so if anyone else wants to start.
I can start.
Hannah would like to start.
Just one thing that's coming up for me is just having really clear crew expectations from the get-go. I worked in one farm where there just were no crew expectations, and which is kind of funny, but yeah, I think it happens more often than not. It's just like, oh, like you just show up at this time and then we do the work and then you go home, and like that's the expectation. But throughout the season, just like finding things where we were not meeting expectations of the owner, and just like learning along the way, like, oh, you want your shovel, like the shovels always need to be flipped down so no one hits themselves in the face, or like expectations on like how you show up, or like breaks and all that. Just having it all ironed out, I think, helps everybody just like know what they're getting themselves into, and just not having frustrating moments down the road where you're like, I thought I was doing everything right because you never told me I shouldn't do it this way, and then running into that later when you've been doing it that way the whole season. So just, one little document could really save you a lot of heartache.
All right, I'll go. Communication, in my opinion, is the most important part of having staff. If you are bad at communication or are afraid to confront something that's going on, you just shouldn't be managing or owning anything, because there will always be issues that come up. It is probably one of the key elements of running anything. Communication, what we do first thing in the morning, we send out a group text to everybody. Being in the restaurant world, chefs yell out what your orders are, line cooks need to yell back, heard chef. We do that on the farm. It's really funny because people come in and they're like, why am I needing to yell back heard? I'm like, because I need to know that you have heard what I have said and you've responded so that I can continue on, because I have 1,000 things to do and you've got this task. So like, let's just keep it going. So communication first thing in the morning. This is the expectation for the day. This is what we're doing. When we show up, we're gonna all do this stuff. And if you don't respond back, I will say, hey, you didn't are you awake? Like, what's going on? Like, I have to get a herd, and we don't spell it like herd, we spell it like a herd of cows. Because it's just fun. We're farmers. We're idiots like that. It's really fun stuff. But communication on every level of, if you see something is going on in the field, you need to pull that person aside at the end of the day, away from everybody, sit them down. How are you doing? What is happening? This is what I'm noticing. And have a very open, always make sure that your staff knows that your door is open to talk. That's something that is communicated as soon as people start working. My door is always open. If you have a problem, you need to come in and talk to me immediately, because sometimes I can't read your mind. And you need to express that feeling to us, because otherwise I can't help you. I do my best with my crystal ball to see what everybody's feeling, but sometimes it's just too foggy in there and I can't tell. Communication is the most important part. What's happening. We communicate about when we're taking our lunch break. We communicate when we're ending the day. Like, if there's 4 feet left of a bed that you gotta weed, then we're not stopping until that 4 feet is done, even though it's 4 o'clock. That's not how it works. We're gonna all say, hey, we're almost there, let's keep going, we're just a little bit farther. Lunch break, same thing. Like, are you hungry at 11? Are you hungry at noon? Like, we all try to get on that same page. But communication, staff feel heard at that point. They feel valued, and it's important to make sure as an owner and a manager that you do value the hard work that they are putting in for you.
Can I jump in? I just want to say like how much I appreciate that, and point out something that Amanda said, which is like, she said when you see a problem happening, you take that person aside and you say, not what the fuck, but you say, how are you doing? You say, this is what I'm noticing is going on, right? Like, it's not a confrontation. It's like, it's leading with curiosity, right? So like, what's going, like, I'm so curious what's happening with you. It seems like something's up, and like, that's clarity, and it's also kindness. So anyway, you just said like so many like basic things. I just wanted to point out how important they are.
I'd say 2 tools that I really use, one being vulnerability. I think it's really important for people to not think that you have every answer, and just really being able to go in and share like, this is how we do it and why, but also being open to like why they might be taking a different approach than you expect. And just like, I think that's something that strengthens the team more than anything, is just kind of doing away with this thought of like boss staff. It's like team. And the second thing for me, and this is maybe even more important, list. I write it down. There's a board. If they're going somewhere, I write it down. I learned this on sending someone for a diesel run. They came back with gas. I went to put it in the tractor and like caught it, thank goodness. But I was just like, oh my gosh. So like, even like diesel run, like diesel, green handle, see you at the farm in 15, this is the gas station we go to, that sort of thing. But pen and paper. I think it just really saves a lot of error.
I will definitely second that. I feel like different people have different ways of learning, and writing it down, showing people exactly what you want, or having an SOP written out, spoken verbally, and making sure you get that, yeah, I got it back. Just all the ways that you can communicate. Do it open, do it often, do it before you even start the work. At the beginning of the season, if you set up those expectations, both of yourself from other people and what your expectations are of your crew. We all go through decision fatigue as farmers. It's just like a million things we have to be thinking about, and mistakes, or if you can like scratch that off the list, you know, it's just one less thing you have to think about if you can get that done beforehand.
One little thing that I would just add is, yeah, texting is a great way to have things written out ahead of time and have everyone on the same page if they're not physically there. Like a morning text or whatever that people are expecting is like cool. One of my pet peeves is like excessive texting off the clock.
Oh my God.
Like so frustrating. You are like communicating about work is paid work. And along with that, I've worked on farms where you're like expected to constantly be on your phone, basically, texting, calling, whatever. And if you're expecting your employees to like use their phone a lot at work, you need to be compensating them for like their phone use. That's not like, yeah, that's like a work expense basically. That should not be on employees. Just putting that out there.
That what everybody said around communication and like what good communication is, and then also like what not good communication is, and that's like another question I have, and something people have brought up is like kind of like intimacy of farming. There's this family aspect, there's this like we're vulnerability, we're all working in, we're seeing the spectrum of people, the spectrum of a person throughout like an intense situation sometimes. And so what are ways to create healthy boundaries around work? And I know that it's different, it can be different for farmers and interns, and the expectations are different. So I'm curious to hear a couple of different perspectives. Yeah, more around that as like coming into farming, what kind of boundaries do you need, and how do you feel welcomed and invited to set healthy boundaries for yourself starting out? And then as a farmer who's in charge of leading a crew, how do you set expectations of boundaries for yourself and for other people? It's a big question.
That is a big question. It's different for me because I don't live on my farm, I don't own my land. But I tell my crew and my higher ups, I have a do not disturb from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. You won't be able to get a hold of me, and I suggest that my team does the same. And my most recent text to one of my crew members, because he just took some time off, was like, don't read this text until you get back. But I knew if I didn't text him, I'd forget, so I just had to put that out there. So yeah, I hope he didn't read it until he got back. But the biggest thing I think is modeling for me what healthy boundaries on the farm look like, because there are times when like I don't know, you get a freak snow and at 11 p.m. you're pulling your seedlings in that you were hardening off, and you need people there. And is that going to just be on you? Is it going to be on your crew? I think that the expectations that you set in your job description and when you're hiring will dictate that. And so I would never, ever, ever ask an unpaid intern to come in at 11 p.m. But I will tell them that that is the reality of farming, that if they go further, that is something that might be expected of them. So yeah, just modeling those healthy boundaries as best I can.
Well, I think that circles back to just like I think that's something that's so important about internships is foresight to what's coming. You know, I think there is this idealism, but none of the farm owners are making a killing. And so I think to like think that an intern can just come in and make $4,000 a month interning in a farm setting is an unrealistic expectation, just because most farmers aren't making that sort of capital. And like, to add to the question, I really think firmness is important, and that's something that I've really tried to work on in my evolution of farm manager. Is not just like, hey, like if you feel like it, maybe it would be really helpful if, but just like, again, it's not about me, it's not about what I need or what I'm asking, it's about the farm. So like, hey, we really need to get all these carrots in before the frost, so we're gonna be working these hours, or, you know, I need somebody, and leave it up to the team, because it is a team. Like, somebody might have a concert that they're going to and they don't want to stay late, and somebody else might be like, I got nothing going on tonight, I'm down to stay and help out. But just like really understanding what the farm needs and then communicating that, I think has been a helpful tool in my toolkit, especially the boundaries things, as far as like my relationships with employees pretty much goes out the window. Like, I'm very much like friends, and that's like a comfort thing for me and hopefully for them as well, but it does make it tricky when you get to the conflict part. So I think just like keeping it in your mind, like it's really about the farm, has been so beneficial to me, just trying to be a leader.
One of the things that I do when I'm interviewing and hiring people in, I am very clear about my personality. They know who they are coming into work for. I tell people that I am blunt to the point, and I don't sugarcoat things. I don't have time to constantly give you praise, but I will give you praise. And it's just one of those things where I am trying to set the expectation of, I can't always come in and be like, you're amazing and I love you, but could you please also, like, I don't have time to do all of that all the time, but just knowing that if I do have a problem, I will say something. And so I do appreciate staff. And so with appreciation, it's important to have a party. And let's do a Friday where we get a big old fryer pot out and we all hang out together and have fun if you want to. It's if you want to come and hang out and like really like get to know each other on a personal level, then let's do that and we'll have fun. But there's also hey, I have a family and I really have to like focus on this, so I cannot be your mom. That's a very important part of it as well for staff, to set that boundary ahead of time, where I will teach you everything that I can and I will help you educate yourself around farming, but when you have personal problems, I'll try to see if I have time to assist with this, but there's that. I have my own kids and I need to tend to them first. But I can try to help you if I happen to have a minute while we're doing something else together. It's expectations that I give to them so that they know, like, hey, I don't like bosses that are like blunt and to the point and not overly friendly. They know that before they start working for me, that that's what they're getting ready to come into. Not that I'm not nice, but sometimes it doesn't come off like that when you're running by and be like, don't forget to do this, and like have to keep running because that's just your life as a farmer. But it's definitely, it's out of love and kindness that you are trying to help remember everything, and it's much appreciated when staff can also set their boundary of like, hey, I'm a manager, so I need to be paying attention to all of these things because this is what I'm getting paid to do. So them also noticing and coming to you and saying, hey, I noticed that we haven't done this yet. Should we do this next? And it's oh my gosh, thank you for like thinking a little bit. Like that's so appreciated. In interns, that is never expected to them to like know what's supposed to be done next, and that's never an expectation set on them. And so boundaries and expectations are SOP. Like get some documents ahead of time and say, hey, this is your job description. And this is what it is, and as manager, your job description is at 9 p.m. running down the road after some cows with me. That's what the job description is. And so those are, I think, communicating in boundaries, personal boundary. I've heard some very personal stuff coming up into the fields, and it's that can stir up feelings for people, and just kind of paying attention to how conversations are going in the field with people, and then noticing, this person's getting a little uncomfortable with this conversation because not all people want to talk about moon cycles. And so like, let's try to divert the conversation off of that and maybe switch topics and try to notice where your staff is, and trying to set boundaries for that sort of stuff as well is super important.
Thank you. I'd love to hear from some of the folks in the middle of the V who have maybe been farming for less time or have had more recent experiences being managed, and what your expectations or needs are around boundaries, and like what felt like impactful leadership around that particular area, or something that you like are like, oh, this was missing from my experience.
One funny story that I had wasn't happened to me, it was a coworker, but without getting into the details, the boss, a coworker like asked for some time off, boss approved it, coworker was like on vacation, found people to cover all his shit, and then the boss, like something happened, got frustrated, called the dude and was like, I hired you to help me, you're not helping me right now. And it's like, that wage labor is like getting paid for your time, you're not like on salary to help someone run their life 24/7. So I think that's like an important, like really good bosses that I've had understand that, and understand that like, yeah, we have a good relationship, like I care about the farm and want to do a good job, but it's not my farm, it's their farm, and like they're paying me to do work when I'm on the clock. And then more frustrating relationships I've had with bosses have been where they like think that everyone is as invested in the farm as they are, and like that's nice, but it's not, like that's never gonna be the reality. Like it's nice to work in that direction where your employees are like invested in the work and invested in doing a good job, but you're kidding yourself if you think they're gonna care about the farm in the same way that the owner does. And like just being realistic about like those are two different roles, and you need to acknowledge that if like both sides are going to like work effectively and like feel good about their relationship, basically.
Yeah. Do you want to? Something I think I've heard from a few people now is that initial contract, that initial conversation, the hiring process is where you set all those expectations around the hours you work, what are the expectations, you know, you're not going to hold your intern to the same expectations you have. I think the more time you put into the initial conversation and the initial setup of that whole contract, the more successful you will be. You always have something to refer back to. You can check yourself. Am I over asking of my employees? How did we set this up at the start? And then if they come to you and have a complaint, you have something to refer back to as well. Another thing that we do off of that contract is we have preset check-ins, which are check-ins where we can really take a larger step back from the day-to-day, to make sure that you are fulfilling the core elements of that contract. Does anyone have any complaints? I'm not someone who always is going to give you the full information in the moment. If you ask me how I'm doing, I'll say, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm good. But in those kind of step back meetings, I might have an opportunity to bring up, like, hey, I'm realizing I'm getting pretty tired. And you can have those kind of other conversations. But I find that helpful to have these periodic, pre-scheduled conversations that kind of take you out of the day-to-day. And then you can fill in past that, because these are all interpersonal relationships, and you have to deal with interpersonal communication and how people are feeling each day. Are you being recognized for your work, etc. But I find that helpful for me as a manager to have. I'm managing day-to-day interpersonal relationships, but I'm also managing this contract that we set up at the beginning. And so set that up well, set up check-ins for that contract well ahead of time. And I think it gives me more space to confidently navigate the day-to-day interpersonal interactions at the farm.
Yeah, something that I really enjoyed about a manager I had was just morale check-ins. It was just like, it felt so much more intimate than any other workplace experience I'd had, where it was like, how is your morale today? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like, I'm dragging and want to be like in the corner on the floor, or like, I'm like super pumped and ready to go. And it just felt nice to know that like, even though my morale didn't change the course of the day, just to like know where I'm at, where my team was at, and feel like, yeah, I had some stake in the day, and like people were looking out for me. Felt really nice with someone who was being managed.
I have a couple of questions that came in through the Zoom chat. One of them definitely has come up in every farm I've ever worked, and so I'm curious to get people's perspectives, and it is, how do you help folks work faster? How do you get them to internalize a need for speed? So
if anybody can have this answer, please sell it to me.
Yeah, what are effective methods for, I
feel like, in my opinion, on that topic, it is the letting people know what needs to be accomplished for the day. If people know, like, all right, this is our list, and we have to get this done for today, that helps them realize, like, okay, we're not just going to be doing this bed of carrots. We also have to do this, 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 and this. So it kind of helps them, like, be able to get their time management going. Also, being the one that's showing the pace and setting that example, super important. And if you see somebody lagging, watch and see what they're doing. Hey, try this method instead. I've really noticed that this really helps me out a lot to try that. It's just communication with them. It's also sometimes just a personality, and if the personality of the person isn't doing what you're asking, you do need to let people go. That is very important and very hard as an owner and a boss. If it's not working out, you need to fire them. Yeah. I'm not saying this because they're slow, but it just might not be their thing. And just recognizing that it is causing you to have to stop working, which then costs more money because you're not doing your job because they're not doing their job. And sometimes it's just a different fit, and it's okay to fire people. It's really hard. It's not a fun day to do. But I have had a lot of managers I have had to teach. I've fired many people being in the restaurant industry, but in the farming world, it's not something that I've done very often. Very rarely have we had to fire people. I have had to, but it is important to remember that if it's not working out, it's not working out, and it's best for everyone to just cut ties.
I like quantifying things. There's moments in the past where it's been like, okay, we've spent $357 in labor and we've harvested $400 worth of carrots. Like, that math doesn't check out. And I think also entering with a sense of understanding of where we're at in the season. Like, it's cold, it's September, it feels like you're asking a lot just to have people finish the season. But I think that's when, like, going back to Tim's, like, having those reference points, that is not my strong suit. But like the onboarding expectations that you can reference back to, but then also the schedule check-ins. I'm really like comfortable doing check-ins. It's important to me, but they're never scheduled. And I guess I am really contemplating that. I'm like, oh, like maybe as an employee, it would be very nice to know that's coming so I can be prepared. And like, if I have something in the back of my head that's bothering me, being like, oh, well, I know next week on Monday, we're going to sit down to talk and I can bring that up to that person then, or just say, you know, these are my frustrations with the farm right now, or what's not working for me. But I think as far as getting people to work faster, it's just the comprehension of the business side of thing because the farm has to make money. And like, yeah, you're harvesting, whatever, $43 more carrots than you are, but how much labor went into planting, watering, weeding carrots? So like, I don't know, that's been a successful tool, from my opinion.
Yeah, I like to devote a whole lesson to what is your profit margin, including labor and this and that. And in some of the SOPs, especially for things like bed prep harvesting, I have expectations of how long it'll take for farm manager, farm worker, and someone just starting out, so they can see from the get-go what that might look like.
I just want to say the SOPs, just in case anyone listening in, standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
And if you're unfamiliar with it, the Lean Farm is like a simple, quick read that really lays it all out, and you can nerd out. That's a great book. Okay, sorry, but I was just like, maybe that's
Thank you.
not standard,
Yeah.
but they're important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then again, just leading by example. Like, this is how fast you need to go, and then having those continued conversations and talks of expectations. And again, there's different expectations for different levels of farm crew. And I tell interns, especially in the beginning, competency is more important than efficiency. Like, do it right. Don't, I don't know, put a hurry through the irrigation. But yeah, I don't know if there's an actual answer to that question, but we're all trying our best.
I have a question for you guys. So what happens when you have an employee come in for the day and they're in a bad mood and you notice it, and you notice that it's affecting their work in the first hour that they're working? Do you pull them aside, you have a little chat, hey, is there something I can help you with, blah, blah, blah. They don't express anything and they go back to work and it still continues. Do you send them home for the day and say, hey, why don't you come back tomorrow? I see that, you're not feeling it today. Or what do you do?
I'm going to talk about what I've done because I've had those people. I take the temperature of the staff. If it's dragging everybody else down, then I will say, maybe you should just, take the rest of the day. Like, I'll pull them aside, never, ever discuss any of these things in front of everyone. It's very unprofessional. But to pull them aside and be like, why don't you just take the rest of the day, you can make up this time on this day, and, it seems like it'd be good for you to do that. And don't give them a choice, just ask them to go and do that for themselves. They probably need some mental health time, is most likely what's going on, and they're just maybe embarrassed or don't want to share because there are boundaries of personal life that they might not want to bring in. But if it's affecting everyone, or else put them on a different task altogether. Done that too. Just been like, how about you work on this one over here by yourself, and everybody else can continue in their chipper, cheerful moods, and they can keep on going. That's what I've done.
Yeah, I think getting the chance to work on something on your own can be like super awesome, depending on the person.
I love headphone signals. Like, if you're having an off day and you don't want to deal with the outside world, maybe just going to, if they're comfortable coming to you and saying like, hey, I'm feeling this way, and then they can just put on an audiobook or whatever and just go zone out on a one-man task has been helpful for myself being an employee, and then also a great tool. I realize that's not always practical. Like, sometimes we have to get stuff done as a team, but I think, farming is so extractive of any human being on it, and just understanding we are not going to show up rosy every day. And I'm not suggesting that's your expectation by any means, but I've been really surprised what a set of headphones can do just to communicate to everyone else. Like, I'm not available today. I'm happy to be here and do the work, but I'm not like my chipper self.
Yeah, I think it really does depend on the person and what they're experiencing that day. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It is maybe a check-in, maybe giving them that option, like other people have been saying. And sometimes just giving that option and knowing that the option is there is enough for people to turn it around. But yeah, I don't expect people to be 100% every day. And if, I don't know about you all, but when someone's in a bad mood on the farm, it brings me down, and then my productivity suffers, and you can't have that. And so whatever's best for that person at that moment and the farm is hopefully we'll get to. But it does take some digging sometimes.
And just keeping an eye out that it's not always happening, that they're having this persistent issue constantly, and every day they're coming in and every day they're dragging everybody down. That's when it's this isn't working. And if you're going to lose that much productivity because this person is constantly bringing everyone down, it is best to let them go sooner than later. And it is a horrible reality, but that's just.
You ever put someone on like a probation, you let them know like, hey, your attitude and your energy is consistently bringing everyone down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you go right now, but you are in the window of observation for the next 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that a situation that ever came up or comes up?
Yeah, I've had to sit down with people 3, 4, 5 times just checking in because they're just completely bawling in the field, and we're like, why are you, what's going on? And it's usually something personal that's happening. But having to sit down with them after, and this is where this is after work, this is taking your time because we can't do this during the middle of our work day to discuss your personal stuff. And so I have had to do that with staff and just be like, all right, like I get you have going through some personal times, but if you can come in and leave that at the door and then come in and we're going to be here to work. It's definitely challenging because that's where it's all right, I'm not a psychologist and I can't always give that advice, but I'm here to at least listen. And that's sometimes all people need is to just be heard. And so that's kind of an important thing to just offer if you have that energy and time yourself as an owner, manager. If you don't, then that's where you got to make that choice.
I think it's important to have those hard conversations. You have to have a solid footing of a foundation of a relationship to begin with. And so having had, all this communication build up, then I think it's not an easy conversation, but it's easier to approach that person and be like, what's going on? Can we help, or do we need to part ways? It's not, unless someone's doing something maliciously, that's a whole different thing. But as long as it's not malicious, then we can either work through the problem or go our separate ways and trust that everybody has each other's best interests in mind.
I just want to echo the option if you're going to send someone home for the day. I love that you're offering the opportunity to make up those hours for the worker in case they are tight on that budget and need those hours another day. Also I went from being an employee to then the manager within the same season, and I found to just in that role, something my former boss had modeled was just asking what tasks were getting me excited for the day, and if you have that flexibility, I found people who just could not deal with bunching carrots, and it was just never put that person on that task because it's just gonna not make them happy, it's not gonna make me happy with the pace. So I had if you're able to, I had a little note of just what people liked and what people didn't like, and just when I had the flexibility to make those plans for the day, I would just funnel people into what they were the best at.
Before we switch topics, I just want to say too, I think farming is so powerful for field therapy. If you do have someone that's in that space, it is such a great opportunity to just go hand weed something together across from each other. You're working on a task, but it doesn't feel like all eyes are on them. It's kind of like having a conversation with someone in a car while you're driving. You're just there's scenery, there's things to look at. It's just this much more open environment than sitting down in a formal setting. I just have found much greater response from working together, and just like head down, like I'm not even looking at them, I'm just listening, has been helpful just for me, because sometimes it is heavy and you're just like, whew, like let me hide my face or my reaction, or like I need this space to process this too. So it's just, I don't know, that's been a helpful tool.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that, because right now we're only talking about employees and employees' health. We, as managers and owners, need to remember to take care of ourselves. It is not just about the staff. It is also about you, because you are the point person for every single thing that comes through, every problem that happens, that nobody's going to stop and ask you how you're doing and be able to soundboard you other than yourself, or if you have your own friends. But take care of yourself as well, because if you're not okay, you can't tend to anybody else. Everybody else's problems is going to be tough to listen to. So it's not just about staff, guys.
That is a great segue to my next question. This question was worded, what are ways we can avoid frustration and burnout during the farm season? And I'm curious if we can avoid those things, and if we can't, what tools do we have as farmers to deal with them, both as farm managers and as employees?
I say leave the farm for a minute. You need to leave the farm for a minute. Go camping, do something not farming. That is, I tell all of my staff, all right, it's the weekend. You have 2.5 full days off. And we work an extra long day on Thursday, and we only work Friday mornings, and we have Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday off. Well, we meaning them, the staff does. I'm like, you need to leave town and get off of the farm and go rejuvenate, and this way you're not burnt out as much. Try to keep your hours where it's doable and not from sun up to sundown. Those are all important things for ourselves as well. I mean, if I don't follow these rules for myself all the time because I can't, but I try to leave the farm and go fly fishing for a while, and all right, this is what I'm doing, and get into something not farming. Everybody else is burnt out. There is no answer for this.
I've been talking a lot, so I wanted to give space for other people.
Yeah, one work perk that I really enjoyed at one farm was a massage therapist traded for vegetables, and then would come and give free massages once a month. Once a month. Okay. Yeah, which was pretty awesome, and it was like a chance to take a break in the middle of the day, and just like an awesome way to like feel appreciated, and just like have everyone have like, wow, this is the best day ever, because I just got a 20-minute head massage in the shade, even if it's 95 degrees out in the field. So if you can swing that and find a cool massage therapist to do that at your farm, definitely will win you points with the crew.
Foot baths, right?
Foot baths, Friday foot baths. Bring your own bucket.
Don't share a bucket.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like those kinds of treats, like popsicles, or like, getting off early, randomly or regularly, like getting whatever other treats or meals is like massages, like super helpful. And I feel kind of torn about that kind of stuff, because on the one hand, it like very much helps you like have something to look forward to every week. Something to get excited about, and like that feels fun, and like I feel like it, for the vast majority of people, like helps your morale and your mindset so much. And like at the same time, I feel like it can get into this dynamic of like, here, have a popsicle, instead of like having reasonable hours or like pay that allows you to like afford your own popsicles.
Or like an hour-long massage off the back when you're like,
actually, yeah, for sure. So I feel like it's just kind of that same thing of like, it's super awesome to like provide treats and perks like that, and also kind of like just be conscious of the dynamic and intentional about it, and not getting into the mindset of like that being like a substitute for like being treated well in other ways, I guess.
I don't know that I've ever
ever told someone no when they ask for time off. I genuinely think if you are asking, it's because you need it or it's something you really want to do. And I like to think of the farm as modular, like, you know, you can work before you go to help get set, you know, like, or someone else can step up, so because they're going to be on vacation next week or that sort of thing. I'm a big Friday beer. I think the power of a Friday beer, just like, especially if you're working late all together in a wash stand, like, just like sharing a beer while you're cleaning up on the clock, like, I don't know, works for me. And for the self-care piece, this is not my strength, but I had when I worked on the 300-acre farm, the farm owner almost offended me. He's like, I don't need you to be a martyr for the farm. And I was just like I'm the truck driver. You know, like, you have all these responsibilities are on you. You can't remove yourself from the setting of like what your job entails. But I think, you know, really like in becoming a farm manager, like understanding what he meant was like it does no one any good for you to like feel like you're putting yourself out for the farm. So really, you know, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've made it a point to like go home every summer. Like, that's my way of like rerouting and like just seeing my family and feel like I'm not neglecting the other aspects of my life. So just trusting that everybody is up to speed and can like do it without you, and realizing like, yeah, you're part of this modular system and you're removable too is really beneficial.
I really feel that. I like to tell my crew that like your mind and your body are your biggest and best tools on the farm. Can't do it without either one of those things. I've been thinking a lot about the frustration and burnout, thinking about how, you know, we wouldn't expect, you know, professional runners to not be tired at the end of a race. What we're doing is an ultra marathon, and we will be tired at the end. We'll have decision fatigue, but there's a fine line between, you know, being very tired at the end and burnout. And what can we do? What grace can we give to ourselves and our team to end and make it through without getting burnt out? I agree with all the things that you've all said, and one of the things I think that my team looks forward to are farm crew swaps throughout the season. So we'll go to another farm, we'll learn about what they're doing, we will dig deep on their farm. It's more fun to work on other people's farms. And then they come and do the same with us. And so it's a learning experience, we're cross-pollinating and we're getting excited. And we get a lot of work done. It's like double the crew for that day. You know your farm for the day. And those are just really reinvigorating and helpful, I think, for newer crew to meet other farmers and learners and things. So, yeah.
Thanks, y'all. In one of the packets, there's a quote from a book called Burnout, which is about the stress cycle, and that was something that the authors say that I really appreciated, was that like stress is inevitable. Like, there will be stress and times of higher intensity in our life, and burnout happens when you get stuck. So it's not stress and then something to relieve the stress. It's just stress, 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 stress. And so what are the things that like you can insert into your own life when you're seeing your side? And there's like lists of like, oh, are you in certain kinds of thought patterns repeatedly, or are you decision fatigue? Are you like unable to like have executive functioning and like at that point, like, okay, what do you need? Hopefully you don't get to that point, but like we do. So what do you need to intervene? And then also like, how can your team and employers and employees help you deal with those stressors? So I guess that's a question. And like, I noted, you know, something that you mentioned, Catherine, of like having a manager who's like, hey, yeah, we don't need you here. Like, please leave. Yeah, and so like we need each other. It's a communal effort. And so what do you need from the people you work with when you're dealing with a lot of stress?
For me, it comes back to that vulnerability piece. Any staff I've been on, I've been there's a fine line, because you don't want to, like, in most cases, there's a farm owner that you're running their business for them, and you never want to bring the or I would say you never want to. It's not advantageous. It happens from time, but it never sets you forward to share those hardships with the rest of the team. I think really keeping those to yourself, but being able to communicate like what is systemic from that. Like, I'm trying to think of an example that really illustrates that, but just like, yeah, being able to say like, you know, these are like, watering didn't happen over the weekend, so I know we planned on starting here on Monday, but I have to go and start the watering because it's been 120 degrees and we haven't had water in 3 days. So like, you know, those sorts of things where it's like addressing the issue and saying like, and maybe even admitting like I'm feeling frustrated about this, like that sort of thing, but also not like placing fault, because that's just like, honestly, people probably know half the time anyways, and it really doesn't do them any good for you to spell it out either.
I just want to say, like, I feel like a lot of that too is about context setting, right? Where like if you can help people sort of understand the bigger picture of like where you're at, I think it's really helpful. Like, because if people don't know that you're also doing like this delivery today and you have like a wedding tomorrow and you have these other things and you have to answer like 12,000 fucking emails, you know, then they don't know why you're like, shut up, go do it. Like, you know, and maybe if you can say, I've got this, and that's why I'm running around and being short with you,
Right.
you know, or like why I can't spend enough time with you right now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But so that bigger context, like I think, that's how I think of vulnerability, right? Is like telling people this is what is actually going on outside of you and in my life. And it's not about you, but I just need you to know it.
Yeah,
I just
maybe
need you
it
to
helps.
know this bigger context,
Yeah,
right?
understanding the position in which you're coming from. I think last season was really interesting in being pregnant and just like, you know, like wanting to share that for the context purposes, but also just like what a wild and like, like I hadn't wrapped my own head around it, but it's just like cool, like, you know, thanks. And honestly, this is going to impact you because it shifts my availability to show up and be here, kind of thing.
Cool.
Right?
Tim, I would love, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, I would love to hear from you. Just
Yeah, can you, there was kind of two questions that melded. Can you just kind of repeat the question for me of what you want to hear?
Yeah, I guess how do you address stressors in your work, and how do you want your teammates or employers or employees to be, how do you want to relate to them around these stressors? Like, what kind of supports do you need? How do you express those things?
Yeah, so this is an instance where I feel like I need to just start by saying the business that I work in is quite a bit different. I think in farming, like you mentioned, like, or alluded to, like the challenging thing of farming is this never-ending grind that doesn't get broken up, and like if it's popsicles or beer on a Friday or getting out of town, these are moments that you really break from that cycle. So in my current work, it's very different. We have set hours, and our schedule changes a lot, and we bring a lot of people onto the farm. And so there's not really a regular schedule. There's a lot of changing of activities, changing of locations, because we're usually in Longmont, sometimes in Boulder. And so as I like think and hear all of you guys talking about this, I think we have it's really advantageous that we have all these breakup moments in our schedule that really change things. And then there's a clock out time, which is pretty set or could have a little give and take. So if you work late, you're gonna get that extra time off. So for me in my context, I think it just comes down to checking in with folks directly. You know, I liked what you said earlier of taking that moment to, and I forget how you said it, but really do like, hey, how are you doing today? And like, there's those really genuine moments of I really care about you, this person that I work with. So I'm trying to think. That really, I think in my context, more or less has taken care of most things. And from my other experience of working on other farms, which relate more to many of your experiences right now, I just agree with what I really like, the vulnerability of like, this is what I'm dealing with right now. I remember one of my prior bosses who was pregnant when I was working on her farm, and sometimes her just relaying these are the things going on here, helped frame things in a context that kind of took me out of my own, like, it's really hot out. Yeah, but I'm pregnant and I'm bunching more bunches of carrots per hour than you are. It's like, oh my God. Let me see what I can do about that. So yeah, I don't know. I trying to find what more I can bring to the table on that, but that's kind of my context for this one. So
I just want to give a shout out for complaining also, because I feel like there are definitely some people who cannot handle any amount of complaining. It really brings them down. They can only work when they're like really stoked. And I know for me, there are days when like addressing burnout comes in the form of just complaining all day, like wall bunching carrots as fast as I can or whatever. And it's nice to have a crew where at least some people can like get down with that once in a while. And it's kind of rough when there's like a mixed crew. But yeah, I definitely think for some people, like just getting it all out and being like really silly and negative, like helps purge that and like make it more fun.
I love that those two go hand in hand too, like, or when those two go hand in hand, like the humor with the negativity, like that's the real medicine. Just like listening to someone bitch and complain all day, I'm just like, dude, I feel you. It is hot out here for everybody, you know. Like I don't have an AC system on my back, like kind of thing, but. Just like adding that element of humor to it, it just really shifts everything. Just getting to like laugh at like, and why did we choose to do this? You know, like, yeah, it's powerful.
Great. Well, we've been chatting for about an hour or so, and I'd love to kind of open it up to the audience and also see if people would like a break. We could take like a 5-minute break, have some water, have some snacks, chat, and like come back to the conversation if that feels good for folks. Okay. So in the spirit of taking a break. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you are a little bit more fed and that your thirst is quenched, especially y'all who've been doing a lot of talking. It's great to have liquids. So a question that came up at the end, which I would love to dive into, and Tim, your sharing made me think of it, which was talking about the different managing styles between nonprofit and for-profit farming. To put it out there that they are different, they have different expectations and ideals and financial setups, and that impacts what and how, like what kind of tools people use for managing. And so I'm curious to hear from both the nonprofit farmers and for-profit farmers around kind of those differing expectations and how that impacts how you manage.
Can we also say who is a nonprofit farmer and who is a?
Yeah, maybe just before you're sharing, just share what kind of farming you are doing currently.
As I mentioned before, I work for a nonprofit. I think, so not to speak for-profit farmers, but obviously one of the main things you're measured by, or that you have to achieve, is sales to pay everyone. Our funding streams, we do some sales, we receive grants and individual donations, some corporate donations as well. So there's a number of things that allow us to financially do business. But as a nonprofit, we have a mission, and so we're tied to that mission. And so in my work, I manage our food project, which is what my programs are addressing are food insecurity in Boulder County, and relieving health disparities that exist within our county for different people. So I do have to produce food on the farm that I manage, but I don't have to make sales on that food. And so I have a number of goals around the amount of food that we donate, people that we are engaging in the donation process, seeds and seedlings that we donate so people can run their own farms, and some other things around that, bringing people onto the farm. So just to wrap that up, that idea that, I have a set of metrics that are quite different that enable us to financially operate. And so some of the things, yes, and I mentioned some other differences earlier, that we generally work within a standard work week, work hours. So, it's a hugely different context to be farming. And I think I could elaborate on that, but that just like is a general context to put out there, that to show how nonprofits who are engaging in agriculture are quite a bit different from for-profit organizations engaging in agriculture.
I can go next, but I don't want to stack the nonprofit. I'm also a nonprofit farmer. Like Hannah was saying, my farm is affiliated with the Mental Health Center of Denver, down in Denver. And so yeah, we have a lot of similar expectations, mission-driven. As Tim's nonprofit, our funding streams are diverse. We are not expected to make a profit or even break even. We are expected, obviously, to produce. And yeah, our mission has to do similarly with the food apartheid, cultural strengths of the neighborhood, and education. And so in terms of being people-centered, I feel I must take the time for folks who are having difficulties or wanting to break into the field, but are coming from a different sector, career, and I do feel it's incumbent upon a lot of educational ag nonprofits to take that time to educate not just the people within their internship or apprenticeship programs, but the wider urban audience as to why farmers across the board struggle with things like low pay, or people not willing or able to pay the full cost of what produce and other things people are providing. But yeah, it's different and complementary, and yeah, I don't think I can elaborate more than what you were talking about.
I have a brief question, because you've said this in our little get together, and you talk about the complementarity of like nonprofit and for-profit farms. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I don't think that the farming world, in terms of what we have to offer, is saturated here. We don't have to compete against one another. Our mission being food access and beyond. I'm selling, say, basil for 50 cents a bunch or less. We have a flexible payment scale, and so nobody is turned away for lack of ability to pay for our food. We also have a pretty large donation stream. And so, again, my team is aware of what it takes and how much food should cost, but we definitely don't make anywhere near
what we could be making if it was sold at full price at, say, a farmer's market. And so I think that for nonprofits who are in the food apartheid, food access, food justice world, we are an endpoint for folks to be able to have that fresh local produce without worrying about cutting into the profits of for-profit farmers. We can work together in that aspect. And then also, again, strongly educating folks across all spectrums about what it takes to be a farmer. I've had corporate people come out and like dig trenches, and they're like, "Oh, this is why heirloom tomatoes are so expensive." Yes, exactly. So for folks who are able to pay that much, they should absolutely pay that much. And folks for whom cost is a barrier to accessing that food, we are here for that. So.
Yeah, I love the idea of it being a mutually beneficial relationship between for-profit and nonprofit farming. I also am curious about that, like, I think someone mentioned in our earlier conversation about the different expectations and how to navigate that. For example, if you have an employee who's worked at a nonprofit farm and then goes to a for-profit farm, it's quite a different culture. And how do you navigate that? Coming from a nonprofit farm, how do you share about expectations both as your farm, but in the general farm world? And then if you have a for-profit farm and are hiring someone who's worked in a different industry, how do you kind of set the expectations around a different style of farm work?
I would say the biggest difference is we're production based. So yes, it's about sales, but you have to produce in order to even make those sales. And the other thing being that many of us are in markets. I sell the same farmers markets as some of the people here, and I would say a spirit of generosity is built into our farm model, but also with an understanding that we are affecting market. So there is this honor system. If someone doesn't have cash today, that's it's okay, just pay us next week sort of thing. But also realizing the bigger footprint of what that does into a farm setting. And just like nonprofits, I think a lot of it is subsidized. So making that connection really well known and transparent to someone that's coming and working on a for-profit farm and in that setting, I think that's a big shift that's happened too. I've been managing for 6 years, but the last 3 years I've been a business partner of sorts, in the sense that I started the business, I've managed the business. I'm not the farm owner. It's someone else's capital, but the business and the books is all on my plate. So that has really shifted my perspective, even just from being in a managing position to really understanding just how impactful every decision you make goes into the bottom line. And having this commitment to pay fair wages, but what does that look like from a production side of things? Last year we had an intern on the farm and several seasoned employees, and the lowest paid position was $14 an hour, which is admittedly not where we want to be at, but that was what was feasible in looking at the books and still trying to have money to pay off the assets and depreciation of the farm values. So I think just in having insight to those books, it changes everything. I was super judgmental of I don't want to say judgmental, but maybe in a sense of farm businesses and these people that were, I was a farm manager for $13 an hour, and I was just whoa, hold up, but then you get into the specifics of what a farm is actually making, and I do think that's the business owner, the farm owners, that's their role to create a system, and I think that's the difference in being a for-profit and talking to the two of you. There's a sweet spot, you know, like you can expand and do all of these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna have a higher profit. So finding a way to dial in a system that's effective for your farm, your scale, your markets. You know, the most inefficient thing you can do in farming, if you're a for-profit farmer, is grow the food and compost it. Like that's the biggest waste. So like how can you really figure out your numbers and dial that in, and then create these systems where it's advantageous to the quantity of people that you're hiring and their skill set and your ability to pay them a competitive wage, I would say, for their knowledge, not for the current market climate of employee wages in Boulder County. I think that is terribly low, and honestly, it's frustrating to see, you know, this like extravagant lifestyle of the farm owner in comparison to the farm managers making $13 an hour. And like, where is that middle ground? And I think a lot of people are trying to answer, you know, I think there's a lot of chefs trying to work towards, you know, bridging that a bit and making it a little less like exploitive, for lack of a better word.
So in other words, it's really easy.
Yeah,
it's not complicated at all.
No. Don't even bother keeping books.
Nonsense. For me, so I'm a for-profit farmer, which is the silliest term I think I've ever heard. I don't know why it's called for-profit anything, because really if there's money coming in, you're just putting it back into your farm anyways, so you're not really like making anything extra. It's, to me, what makes the most sense about nonprofit farms is that they're subsidized, and in my opinion, every farm needs to be subsidized. We all, because I grow organically, I can't use that word, I use ecoganic because the government has called me and threatened to sue me over the word organically grown. All these things do come, so do know your rules and laws and be okay with taking a hit when you're just like, oh, cool. As a for-profit farm, I don't have a board, I don't have extra money coming in, I don't have any sounding board of anybody else helping with decisions. I am all of those things. It is hard, but it's also freeing because I don't have somebody else saying, nope, we're not going to do that idea. That's not going to happen right now. It's all right, I've got the energy, I'm going to do this idea. And that's kind of the freeing part about it. In my mind, if you're going to make money and living as a farmer, I feel like being a nonprofit farmer is kind of the way to be going. Getting employees in from nonprofit farms, we are production farms. Like, you have to get this food out now so that you can pay these people anything. It's not much, and there's farms right down the road from us, and to us, like, our managers get paid $17 an hour to manage vegetable production, and that's crap. Like, and I'm the owner, and I don't even make that much money, and it's the cool, like, what is going on with our system? And so looking at these nonprofit farms is like, this makes more sense. We need to be subsidized. We need to get more monies coming in, because a tomato, what is it worth? $1 million is really what it's worth. Like, that's what it costs. And so it's that, like, blood, sweat, and tears do go into everything that you grow. And so trying to collaborate more, and I know some farmers that have a for-profit farm and are attached to a nonprofit farm, which is brilliant. You get some extra, there's a lot of laws and a lot of tax breaks that nonprofit farms get, which then can help out the for-profit farm. And so kind of knowing a lot of rules. So as a farmer, I am my own lawyer, my own accountant, my own bookkeeper, my marketing department, my HR, plumber. I am the tractor driver, I'm a cheerleader, like, the team, we're doing great. It's just, you're just everything. And you really, if you're going to get into owning land and you don't have a board behind you, you need to know what you can and you cannot do on that property. You need to know it more than land use department thinks that they know it. You need to know the rules about every single thing, and if you're gonna break them, like Joel Salatin says, everything I do is illegal. And you just need to know what the things are that you're doing, and you need to know what you're gonna say sorry for and what you're gonna go and do anyways. I've had the USDA show up to try to shut me down because I harvest my animals on my property. Little do they know that I actually have contracts with all these people, that they own these pigs before I actually kill them and harvest them for them. They had nothing to say. You will be personally attacked by the government if you are a for-profit farm because you don't have a board to help you take those blows. And so it's kind of this, it's just very different styles of farming. So if you're getting ready to start a farm, look into both styles and see what works best for you, because they're just different. Having staff come in, it's been slow and a little bit of a struggle because it's not, I tell everybody when I hire them, this is not rainbows and butterflies out here. It's hard work and you're gonna sweat, your back's gonna be tired, your knees are gonna hurt. Everything is gonna suck at one point and it's okay. And so that's kind of we gotta move still. And so it's kind of being that cheerleader at times.
I think it's interesting too, just like the subsidies. It's like you can be big ag and get subsidies, and you can be nonprofit and get subsidies. But for the people in between, we're lucky to be in Boulder County where there is so much tax money and opportunity going into that. But just being right outside in Weld County, it's a completely different world. And I just would pose that to anybody listening or that tunes into this. Like, what are those shifts we can make on a broader scale to support this size and scale of farming? Because I really think that like what we're doing on the smaller acreage, everybody in this room, like that is the future of farming. So like how can we partner with nonprofits to maybe be like an extension of their farm, or like, you know, conceptualize new ways to like benefit from the subsidies without having to change our entire business model. Something to chew on.
A quick story about the non-subsidies for our sized farms. We went through the flood back in 2013 and all of our fields got wiped out. This was in September. Our members were a CSA only farm and our members lost 9 weeks worth of food. We had nothing to give back to them. We needed all of that money that they still paid in because that is our insurance. There is no insurance that we can get on our crops. I called up the SBA to get a loan to help me finish out the season. They laughed at me and said, well, if you're not a commodity crop, we can't give you, you're growing food, we can't give you money. I said, well, my husband is a stonemason and his rocks out front got dirty. Could I get a loan to wash them? And she's like, oh, absolutely. So this is where our system is. And being a farmer that's growing food for people, you have to figure out a way to insure yourself. And CSA has been the only thing that I have found to be able to do that. It's really, having subsidies, like we have to start thinking of ways to do that for our small farmers, because I agree, it is the only way we can help the environment is small scale farming.
We have a question in the chat. They're asking for some clarification on what subsidies for the nonprofit farms look like. Is that just grants and donations, or are you referring to something else in addition?
My understanding would be, so nonprofit organizations generally don't pay tax on most, if not all, of the things that we buy. So that's one, but then I would assume past that we're talking about donations and or grants.
Volunteers.
Volunteer labor? Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
I think grants are huge. The amount of money that is out there for grants, both on a local scale and many of them being corporate grants, you know, but I have a different background in nonprofit world, so have insights to how that process goes. But I think that is a huge, you know, just even being able to have like Colorado Gives Day, for instance, to be able to get donations on that day that are matched by other foundations. There's foundations all over town that are people that have, you know, Longmont Community Foundations, for example. There's 10 different families that all are putting money into this foundation, and they say, hey, we're committed to early childhood education or the furthering of the environment, in which case the furthering of the environment, a program like Growing Gardens can be like, oh, like that's applicable to us, we're gonna go ahead and like, make a grant submission or a video grant, whatever it be, for this monetary funding for the farm. And that, like, if you are a for-profit farm, you don't qualify for that. You have to be a 501c3 in order to get that sort of funding. So it's just like not even on the table for us, if that helps. I don't know.
And there are, to be fair, like funding opportunities for-profit farms through government, but like Amanda was saying, they're often limited to very large-scale farms, or just there's a lot of limitations, right? So I think like just maybe the opportunities for getting funded are different because of the tax status of your organization.
Right, and rarely is it like startup cost funding, right? Like if like when farmers need money the most, it's like in the first most formative years. And generally that sort of like government subsidies, they want a 10-year established farm that like they know like you're a secure investment per se.
Any other thoughts, Renee? I don't know how your nonprofit funding works, if it's mostly grants or.
It's a lot of grants. It's difficult. My organization, my nonprofit, is not an ag nonprofit, and so we don't qualify for a lot of grants. But we do have a big organization that their funding supplements what we do, so helpful in that way. I feel like one of the distinctions in terms of, if you're just entering into the field, in terms of risk, like it's risky being a for-profit farmer, and that risk is removed when you're a nonprofit. There's a lot less mental stress that comes with a guaranteed paycheck and maybe benefits. And the thing that you might lose is your autonomy. You no longer get to make all the decisions. I have to ask for permission to buy couplers, like everything. Like, so I don't get a card. I have to ask for everything, and I get told no a lot. And and maybe it's freeing to know that the no on a for-profit farm, I don't know this, is financial, as opposed to somebody else saying you can't do that. I know a lot of families value autonomy.
Right, or having to explain to a board what a coupler is and why it's a benefit, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like that much more work that you're going through every day to even just explain.
Yeah, I've had to put in proposals for everything. Like, can I get some more LED lights for growing seedlings? Proposal.
Right.
Can I post this picture on social media? Proposal for social media. So it's just they're very different, interconnected, but very different.
Hannah, have you worked on a nonprofit farm? No, okay, I wasn't sure if Benevolence was or not.
No.
Okay.
No. He's very. It's a different, yeah.
What about without getting too far off the path, like what about an example of how a for-profit farm can connect and work with a nonprofit to help each other in securing some of these funds and helping that for-profit farms can't? Does anyone have an example of like what that relationship might look like?
Yes, I feel like I'm talking a lot, so please jump in, but yes, there is actually a dairy farm right near us that does it. They hold kids camps through their nonprofit on their for-profit farm. And so they're able to lease their space and their time to the nonprofit to pay them to do these camps.
Which they also like run and own the nonprofit.
You got it.
It's the same thing.
So the nonprofit kind of underwrites the means to the farm itself because it's playing host to the education center. Interesting.
And even if the nonprofit can purchase things from the for-profit farm, like we're going to host a dinner there, or we're going to get these vegetables from you, and then if you're like, hey, but I need this tool to get these vegetables, that you need
Need a trailer.
or a Caterpillar tunnel, like whatever it might be, the nonprofit can then get those for you, and you have a gift of these things
Okay,
in a way.
something to think about.
Yeah, wheels are turning.
And I would say too, you know, for-profit farms are not allowed to have volunteers, like technically. You can't do that. You have to pay everybody that works for you on a nonprofit, or on a for-profit farm. But you can partner with a nonprofit who will, you know, come in and bring people to glean or whatever, or do harvesting, you know. So Uproot Colorado is one, is an organization that does that. So, you know, to bring it back to like labor, that sometimes there are things that you can bring in volunteers that you don't have to pay. And of course, that's not the same relationship as having like an employee that you've trained. But it does give you like a lot of labor at once if you need it through the nonprofit.
Yeah, and a program like Uproot can be so beneficial, just like if you have a bed you're trying to clear out and like flip, you can have them come in and just to plug them for a second, because they aren't just here in Boulder County, they really go San Luis Valley, just like, I don't know who all tunes in, but might be a benefit to reach out to them if you ever need some transitional beds or something like that. They can be a good source to make that happen.
So the nonprofit doesn't pay any, like, you know, tax or things like you're talking about, does it, I mean, is there an upfront cost to starting a nonprofit? Like, if I'm gonna start a nonprofit for an educational aspect of our farm, am I paying to do that, like, to them, to offer this service, which is, like, I don't know, benefiting everyone?
I don't know that there's an upfront cost other than maybe around starting a business. You need to have a mission and you need to have a board, and the board helps guide you to fulfill that mission. So it's not as simple as like putting, you know, like just changing some paperwork. There's a lot more, like there's more energy and effort that goes into it, but yeah, does anyone else want to chime in on that?
No, I think that's really valid.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't even add to that.
Yeah, paperwork probably costs money because it always costs money to file paperwork, but.
Yeah, and that was just a question,
that's
like,
part of it.
if someone wanted to start a nonprofit, which I'm sure happens all the time, like, can they just throw money at it, or, which doesn't seem to be the, you know, which I agree with, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, it's an interesting area, an interesting topic, because a nonprofit is, you know, held to working towards the public good. But if you're on a small scale, diversified farm, and you're not like in this like, you know, for profit, you're like, what brought us here to this? Something else. You are stewarding land, you are providing healthy food for people. I think the future of like where this area of smaller local food and farming is going, it will be very interesting. And like I hope these things do merge a bit more. I hope there are more benefits for, you know, being able to show that you're supplying your local community with healthy food. But right now you're probably measured more so against commodity crops without the subsidies. So yeah, it's challenging. Hopefully we can change a lot of that.
I think Dave had a question.
Well, it's more just a comment. I think that you don't want to start a not-for-profit in your first years of starting a for-profit. You want to have a few years underneath you, or you're going to get audited like crazy. And then, but it is a very effective strategy. I worked for a not-for-profit when I first got started out of college, and I wish I had just been a little more aware of everything that they were going on, because it's like lots of shell companies. It was like a for-profit, a not-for-profit, they had a real estate development company, and so they had an accountant that was very good at what she did. And there's ways to get around things, but you just need to sort of start and look for board members.
There are a couple comments in the chat. Meg Haley's providing some insight that for the IRS 501c3 application that they did in 2009. It was around $900, so there's just a fee for the becoming a legal entity. And then some other insights she added is you only need an audit as a nonprofit when your revenue starts to exceed $500,000.
Oh.
So apparently there's a threshold there for how much monitoring you have.
And that's Meg Cayley, who runs Sprout City Farm in Denver.
Thanks, Meg.
Yeah.
Thanks, Meg.
Sprout City Farm also has a farm in Longmont that you
Mhm.
could visit.
Yeah, the Solar Garden.
I'm curious if there are any other questions from the audience. We've got some time, so if anything comes up that you want to ask to the whole group.
We have one other from Zoom.
Great.
If I can pose that.
Yes.
For those of you who have helped manage interns that maybe had a career transition and entered farming later in life, or maybe were an older intern, did you find that your relationship with them looked different than how you described work with like young interns or millennials, and how did like managing them look different?
I can't say that applies to me in the means of internships. I've hired peers my own age with equal longevity and farming history, and I think it's very different. I find it much easier to manage somebody that's less experienced than myself, and I think particularly because I don't like to micromanage, like that's important to me for everyone to feel really empowered, and trying to give them different domains and sovereignty in the farm to have that investment of self and a sense of ownership. But I do think it's tricky too when it's a business and you understand the business side of what's been created and the evolution of the business, when they may be coming on just like, you know, doesn't matter, years later into the business and haven't seen where it started and that kind of cash flow and have a good sense for that. I think that has been challenging. And yeah, I try to stay an open book, but sometimes it's hard too to really open the books without giving someone like a whole day's worth of a story as to like why these decisions have been made the way they're made and like that sort of thing. So I wouldn't stir anyone away from it. I think it's really important, and I think what's the like term, like a stable of racehorses. Like you really have people that if you say like we're gonna go out and like, you know, like take care of beds 2 through 18, you don't really have to coach them. Like they know that's arugula, they know this is carrots, they know this is beets, they know the appropriate spacing. But I think just trying to have that kind of sense, like it's hard to like almost empower without like giving up the vision of the farm in a sense. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
I'll chime in that I've managed people, most people I've managed have been older than me, which is definitely an interesting experience. And yeah, I guess my approach to that has been to just stay super humble and just say like, I know you're coming in with all this great experience and I really respect it. Please like let me know like if there's anything you would do differently. I'm totally open to it. At the end of the day, like I'm gonna need to make a decision, but like I'm happy to have you be part of that. Which has worked out, and just like really like seeing their strengths and not being afraid of them. I'm just like I can't be afraid of them. I need you and I need your experience, and I know less than you maybe about this thing or many things. So I think that's just been like very humbling and just like a great reminder to just recognize your people and what they're bringing to the table, regardless of how old they are. And how old you are.
I think humbling being like a really important and operative word. And I think too, just realizing how much knowledge you gain being in the same space for more than 1 year. I know y'all are so excited to be farming the same land. Year 2, it's a big deal. Like you know the water systems, you know the irrigation timelines, you just really get a sense for weed pressure and like when it happens. And I think that is just like such a hard variable to comprehend without having done it. And like each season gets easier once you've been through it. But just having been someone that's transitioned a lot from different farms, I think the second year is just always like immensely simpler than the first, because you have an understanding of just like the flow of the farm and how to operate most efficiently.
Something that I would suggest to this person that's looking at interns that are transitioning positions and their age being maybe a little bit more. I'm 43 and that's definitely a difference farming. Be upfront about what your expectations are. We are kneeling in the field a lot. We are bending over constantly. And so that it is explained of like, this is my, and I say this to everybody, it doesn't matter the age, because I've had 20-year-olds come in and I said this to them and they're like, but my knee. I'm like, dude, I told you this. We're sitting on our knees all day. I don't think it's really too much of an age thing. It's more of a, this is what our body takes to do this. And if you can hang, then let's do it. That's kind of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, it's down to the individual person. I've had, not necessarily older than me, but maybe my age or not right out of college or something, come and they've been trying to break into the field for so long. They've been dreaming about it, and it goes either way. Either they dream something that was like, this is not actually farming, this is just like what you see in a picture, and they get disillusioned quick. Or they've been dreaming about it, and they put their whole heart and soul into it, and they go, and being older, they have better boundary making, they know what they want, so it's easier. But then the other ones, and the same with, people who are younger, idealized farming, and it's hard work, it's hard. But yeah, I tell people there's no shame in crawling along the pathways. Like my son goes, "Why do you go ugh every time you get up?" Like, it's hard. So I mean, how you feel, how you can train your brain to take the physical punishment of farming. You have to address it at every age.
Yeah. The word grit comes to mind, and like, I think it's easy to like think like, oh, it'd be so nice to be outside all day, and like you're just like,
the rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the romance of it all. But I think really just perseverance is like a key component in any farmer, because it's nonprofit, for profit, doesn't matter. Like it's it can be excruciating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, and I want you guys to, I work, this kind of going back to more like team building kind of thing and just employees, but I worked for several different farms, and one would always have meetings, like morning meetings, some would not. And basically it was like either, okay, here's our list, we're gonna go out and do it, or we're gonna talk about all these things that sometimes don't really pertain to you. But we talk a lot about, we wanna try to get people involved, you want people to know what's going on with you, but where, as a business owner, do you find that line? Where do you, in those meetings, or what do you guys think is like a good dynamic for meetings, for talking with your crews? Because I've kind of experienced both, and I'm sort of on the fence of where to go with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Go for it.
Well, I just say threshold. Like I love like a morning meeting. I think I think it gives time for stragglers to, like we start at 7, but if someone's there at 7:03, I'm not gonna open my mouth. It's like, if you're gonna be 15 minutes late, shoot us a text so we're not all waiting on you for the morning meeting.
Yeah.
But I love that opportunity to paint the big picture of like, this is everything that has to get done today, and then the delegation of those things. So like, if you two can work on this, we're gonna do the wash stand, we need this delivery to BCFM by noon. Like, just kind of giving that whole thing and then like really having to like go back in to the two that you delegate to this, like, you know, especially if they haven't done it. And sometimes you pick who you're assigning tasks to because you know they know how to do it. Like you two are harvesting flowers because y'all harvest flowers and that's it and that's your world and go for it. But then, you know, other people, if they've never done something before, and like so much of, I think, healthy farming is giving people new tasks and not doing mundane, like, oh, like, you know how to pick beets, so you're just the beet buncher for the rest of the season. Like, appreciate you showing up. I mean, there's some things, but like for me, the like daunting thing is row cover. I don't know why, just to like the inertia it takes for me to like, just like, but I think that opening and closing the greenhouse, like it's so exciting in the first couple weeks, and then I'm just like, fuck. Sorry. True sentiments there. But I think really trying to just, I don't know, that's my approach, diverse. But I love, too, it's like I wish and like that every day wasn't a harvest day and you could just start off like all hoeing a bed together, talking about the weekend, just like being a team. But that's just like, I've never found that to like, that seems like a lofty vision to me, like to actually pull that one off. But you know, I just love all like team huddle kind of thing. I just think farmers, I don't know, I'd be interested to take a poll, but like how many people have played sports in their life, because I think there's a huge correlation between the spirit of the farmer and the spirit of the athlete, and like many of us have played sports, just I don't know. So team huddle means a lot to me. Yeah, exactly. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any thoughts about that particular question, morning meeting?
I mean, I've done both where it's been a morning text, group text to everybody, and I've done it where we do meet up in the morning first thing. My opinion on the difference, it's your team. I kind of also feel out to see would people rather know before they arrive what they're doing, or would you rather get here and then discuss it while you're sipping your coffee, but you better be paying attention. It's definitely, I only give out information that is necessary at that moment. If you're giving them too much information, sometimes they, like you're saying, like they're not invested. They don't give a shit like where you're at. Like they don't.
Exactly.
And you don't need to waste your energy giving that information to them. You do want to get everybody invested. That is my goal, is that when you're working for us, you need to get invested. Because at some point or another, shit will hit the fan and you will need to step up. This last year I had all three of my managers have to go down for personal reasons at the same exact time. Out of anybody's control, and it now all of a sudden was me and my other staff members, and I had to look at them and be like, all right guys, like it's go time. Like, are you a farmer? Are you going to do this for your life? Like, is this your dream job? Like, if it is, you're gonna step up and we are gonna like rock this CSA pickup with 4 of us. And there's usually 12 people. Like, it's a okay, cool, like this is happening. And that's when I give out extra information. This is what's going on, this is how everything's feeling, this is where we're going. I am like out here an hour before you, out here 2 hours after you, just because things, and this is, so they know why I'm exhausted, why I'm not like, woo! That's when I give out extra information. But it's all about always taking the temperature of the staff, seeing where they're at, and do they want to hear it? If they do, they'll ask questions. If they're wanting to know where everything is, they'll ask, and because I encourage that environment of questions. I encourage my CSA members to ask questions. I encourage everyone that comes to our farm to ask questions. I encourage people who are buying food to be asking their farmers questions, and if their farmers are like, I'm not telling you that, I'm like, well then you need to leave that farm immediately. And so it's I'm always trying to just see where people are.
Can I add one thing to that? I think that's like an incredible business marketing strategy too. I can't tell you how much like a long-winded answer means to somebody, and like sometimes it's so annoying to like stop and like explain to a market customer, but I think that's like really of value to them and like really helps with outreach. And the other thing, I haven't done this, but if you do farm and own your land, I've been a part of this, but Monday lunch meetings are like so freaking cool. Like one person peels out and just goes and makes like, I swear to goodness, like grilled cheese and tomato soup, but to all like I don't know, something about like just starting Monday and like having momentum and like getting those like simple, like Mondays are rarely a harvest day on most farms. I don't know. Generalized. That was a generalization.
Other than zucchini.
Or cucumbers.
Yeah, your daily things.
Every day is every day.
Precisely. Don't remind me of daily kicks. I'm 6 months out for those. I forgot. But yeah, I think that was something on the farm I was at in North Carolina that was just so incredible to like come in and then like eat a nice meal from veggies that we've all grown together that somebody prepared, and like just have like the weekly like projection. Like that was I've never offered that, but I've been a part of that, and that was super cool.
Just gonna note that it is 12:04, and we can keep talking, and I think the online folks, the time was from 9:30 to 12 or something like that, so just you're welcome. I'm sorry. You're welcome to stay on if you're online, and I think we can keep chatting if people feel good about that. A question that had come up before, which is about retaining employees. And so for employees, the question is kind of what makes you want to stay on a farm, and what has made you want to leave. And then for managers, what have you found success in retaining employees, and if so, what do you think contributes to that success? I'd love to hear from some of the employees first, maybe.
Yeah, just the first thing that comes to mind is like how I was like cared for, was able to take care of myself physically, emotionally, and financially through all of the farming. And yeah, financial well-being is like, we've touched on the other things and we've also touched on finances. I think just, yeah, being able to like know like you can pay for things and have the life you want is huge. And like apart from just like doing the work you love. And yeah, so my big soapbox is like, yeah, just how are you looking out for yourself, and like do you have a retirement account? Like what's your plan for that? Like can we all contribute 10% of our income to that? Or like how are we balancing student debt? And I know not everyone can offer like a 401k, like I don't think anyone does. Yeah, but just like, you know, saying like I can't give this to you as a manager, as the owner, but like here are some options for robo investors, and you can set up your own Roth IRA, and here's how to do it, and here's the information, because I care about you as a whole human, and like I know I can't pay you that much, but like here's how to think about, you know, like taking care of your long-term health in many ways. So I would encourage that, yeah, because I think, yeah, we're in a tough spot, and yeah, we're all amazing people and deserve to have beautiful lives.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Retention, yeah, definitely, like, feeling taken care of, getting raises, like, definitely every season, hopefully within the season. I really appreciated bosses who are, like, generous with staff food and stuff, and just, like, see that giving stuff to staff as like a good use of extra stuff. Obviously always appreciated. And shoot, I was just thinking of something else. I guess kind of on the subject of raises and retention, something that this is a little bit divergent, but if anyone wants to like throw in comments, I've had some like gotten into some sticky, weird situations with pay transparency among coworkers, where I kind of like, racism happening with people who have worked at farms for a long time but are taken for granted, but then who like don't want. Anyways, it gets sticky really fast, and I'm just kind of like my first take is like transparency should be the goal, but I'm sure that people who like own farms and have managed employers have like been on the other side of that situation and like have reasons why that is not always the goal, and I'm sure people have a lot to say.
Do you mind elaborating? Like, do you mean transparency between employer and employee on the pay rate, or amongst employees? Like, I know what you're making, you know what she's, like that?
Both. Like,
Both.
I think, like, knowing what your coworkers are making and being able to talk to your boss about it and have them give you, like, a valid, be able to explain why in a satisfying way, I guess. So I guess that's, like, definitely related to retention, but also kind of its own thing. Yeah.
Are there things that, like, and I've like overwintered on a farm, before where I came back the next year. But it's like, what if we're, if I'm a farm employer and just getting started and I'm like, I love this person. She's amazing. I want her next year. I can't afford to pay her like over November, December, January, February, maybe March. That's a long time. Like, what do we do about that? Like, are there ways that we can help that, like, do we have to offer a stipend over the winter? Do we offer work doing, I don't know, social media or bookkeeping, or like how can we help with that huge, horrible problem?
I feel like that's so dependent on the farmer's capital resources. I've been on farms where they're like, oh, like, we want to keep you on if you want to help with animal fencing this winter, or repainting a barn, or that sort, like, honestly, even like chainsawing fallen trees and stacking them with a skid steer, like that. These are all winter work opportunities I've been a part of. But then again, just seeing the books, and especially of a farm that's not established, or the model is to pay the employees a premium during the height of the season. It's like, I can't really take the 12 grand that the farm profited and not pay off the assets and not have seed money for next year. But I do think that's an interesting thing. Just being here in Boulder County, because I do think there is a lot of capital and a lot of resources. But again, it's where I turn to like the bigger community. Like, is there like, like different like nonprofits that need more help with, whatever, and could like value the experience of farmers and hire them for consultation purposes or panelist reason, just like, I don't know, like, is there those sorts of ways? Because I don't feel like, I will genuinely say, I think every farmer would love to keep on the staff that has been of service and been of value, and like, if you do have housing opportunity, I think that's a really popular answer, is like, hey, you can stay here this winter, like, we'd love to have you next season, but I don't have any like means to pay you during this time. But if you want to get a job at a coffee shop, like, you don't need to worry about like paying rent, or like maybe it's just a basic, like, if you can do like $50 a month to cover
electricity or whatever.
Yeah, electricity and water, and like, the showering expense and keeping the fridge turned on or whatever. But yeah, I think again, it's like, I just spin wheels on like, what are those like long-term, bigger like community answers for like, healthcare, 401ks. I'm like laughing at me coaching someone on a 401k plan for themselves. I'm like, like when I start one on a personal note, but like,
you're speaking of?
Yeah, retirement. And not that I don't want that for myself, but it's just like, that's not where I'm at, so it's certainly not an area that I feel like any level, like I would love someone to coach me. I mean, we can talk. Yes.
Workshop number 5.
Yeah, exactly. He was gonna lead. Yeah, anyhow, not to get chit chatty as I do, but that's my response.
That's the housing thing has been how I've been able to retain people. I also try to, when it comes to the end of the season, I'm very clear on like, these are the months that I can pay you. And then I have a lot of friends in the restaurant community, and I can be like, hey, do you need extra help? Because I have this staff member that's amazing and would be really great at this position. And there's just assisting in finding that winter job. To then be like, cool, so you're going to be quitting there at this date, right? But to be able to offer the housing is huge, and if you're working on a farm with animals, there's always work. And so that's kind of the thing. I mean, if you're brave enough to winter farm with vegetables, like, yeah. It's definitely hardcore. But animals are you don't get Christmas off. You think it's a holiday? I mean, I've had staff quit because we didn't not work on 4th of July. I'm like, do you want my animals to die? Like, you're cool if all the animals get no water. Like, awesome. So it's you gotta want it as a farmer, like as a staff member. You gotta want to come back. You gotta want to do this. And if you don't, and if you're not invested, you should probably not do it. Yeah. Housing. My only answer I got.
Yeah. And I just find it interesting too. It's like many of us don't even have, like many of us are figuring that out for ourselves. Like what's our own winter income look like, or how do we take this money and just use the sale of animal products over the winter to subsidize our own families. So like, again, it feels like a lofty vision to be able to offer that to every member of your team that you've really struggled, I don't want to say struggled, but like have prioritized paying all season long, like hail season, whatever, like that's your loss, like, like what was that, 2018? Yeah, 2018. There's hail here in June and then again in August. So everyone planted their zucchini out, got pounded. Everyone started new zucchini, and then by August, just like, okay. Like, yeah, I'll never forget being at that market. He's like, wow, we're like back to our normal sales. We're like, yeah, it's exciting, hail that night, it's just like, and that's the sort of thing, it's like, I think that's like so important to experience as an intern, as an employee, like, because that is the reality of farming at this current climate in the world. Like, we're not, like, none of us are rolling in it by any means. I think we're all like getting by and like living a life we love, but